Tristan knew something was wrong the moment his mother gave him that overly cheerful smile. "Don't be mad," she said. He narrowed his eyes. "That usually means I'm going to be mad." His grandmother laughed softly from across the kitchen. Tristan folded his arms. "What happened?" His mother took a breath. "Your zombie costume isn't here." Silence. "My what?" "Your costume. It must still be at home." Tristan stared at her in disbelief. They were spending Halloween weekend at Grandma's house, nearly 2 hours away, and the costume party was supposed to start that evening. "You're joking." "I wish I were." "You checked?" "Twice." He dropped dramatically into a chair. "This is the worst Halloween ever." "Oh, please," Grandma said. "You've survived worse things than a missing costume." "That was my best costume." Tristan had spent weeks planning it. The torn clothes, the pale face paint, the fake scars, everything was ready. Now the entire outfit was sitting uselessly in his bedroom at home. His mother exchanged a glance with Grandma. "There might be another option," she said. Tristan looked suspicious. "What kind of option?" Grandma disappeared down the hallway. A few moments later, she returned carrying a large white box. Dust covered the lid. "What's that?" Tristan asked. "My old party dress," Grandma replied. She carefully opened the box. Inside was a beautiful vintage dress from the early 1960s. The fabric was pale blue with delicate details around the waist, and layers of petticoat material were folded beneath it. Tristan sat up. "That's actually kind of cool." Grandma smiled. "I wore it to a school dance when I was about your age." His mother leaned against the counter. "You could wear it as part of a costume." Tristan raised an eyebrow. "A costume?" "A 1960s party look," she explained. "Vintage clothes, old-fashioned hairstyle, maybe some accessories. You could go as a character from that era." Tristan looked at the dress again. It was definitely not a zombie costume. But it was interesting. "I don't know," he said. "You don't have to," his mother replied quickly. "It's your choice. We can find something else to wear." That answer surprised him. For the past several months, Tristan had become interested in his long hair. At first, he had only wanted to keep it out of his face. Then he had discovered braids, twists, buns, and other styles while searching for hair tutorials. Eventually, experimenting had become a hobby. He had learned how to braid. He had tried headbands. He had spent an entire afternoon figuring out how to create a hairstyle with 2 small braids joining at the back of his head. And, although he would never admit it at school, he enjoyed it. The dress was different, though. This would be going outside, where people could see him. "What if people laugh?" he asked. His mother sat beside him. "Then that would say more about them than it does about you," she said. "But again, Tristan, you don't have to do this." He thought about that for a while. Then he looked toward Grandma. "Can I try it on first?" Grandma's face brightened. "Of course." Upstairs, Tristan changed into the vintage outfit with his mother's help, making sure everything fit comfortably. The dress was a little loose around the waist, but Grandma found an old ribbon that solved the problem. Then Tristan stood before the mirror. For several seconds, nobody said anything. The dress fell around him in a wide, elegant shape. Beneath it, the petticoat gave the skirt a dramatic fullness. He slowly turned from side to side. "Well?" his mother asked. Tristan looked at his reflection. "It feels weird." Grandma nodded. "That's fair." He turned again. "But kind of awesome." His mother laughed. "Awesome?" "Yeah. Like one of those old photographs." Grandma clasped her hands together. "I knew that dress still had one good party left in it." Tristan grinned. Then his mother looked thoughtfully at his long hair. "If you're going for the full vintage look, we could try a hairstyle." Tristan hesitated. "What kind?" "A beehive." He stared at her. "A what?" The next hour became an experiment. His mother watched a few vintage hairstyle tutorials while Tristan sat in front of the mirror, occasionally laughing whenever another bobby pin was needed. "Are there 1,000 of these things?" he asked. "Approximately. My head weighs 10 pounds now." "You're being dramatic." "I'm wearing a mountain of hair." Eventually, however, the style began to take shape. His hair was carefully arranged upward and secured into a tall vintage-inspired style. A ribbon was added near the back, giving the entire look a distinctly early 1960s appearance. Tristan slowly opened his eyes and looked in the mirror. For once, he had no joke ready. He simply stared. The person in the reflection looked completely different. Not like Tristan on an ordinary day. Not exactly like someone else, either. Just like a character. A character who had stepped out of an old photograph. Grandma appeared in the doorway. Oh my goodness. Tristan turned. What? You look like you're ready for a 1962 school dance. He smiled. Is that good? It is extremely good. His mother stood behind him. What do you think? Tristan studied the reflection again. I think, he paused. I actually want to wear this tonight. His mother smiled. Then you should. At the party, Tristan introduced himself as Tess. Not because anyone had forced him to. Not because he wanted to pretend to be someone he wasn't. But because, for one evening, he liked having a costume with its own character and story. Tess belonged in a different decade. Tess wore a vintage party dress. Tess had an enormous hairstyle held together by what felt like hundreds of bobby pins. And Tess was apparently very good at making an entrance. Nobody laughed. In fact, several people complimented the costume. One woman asked where he had found such an authentic dress. It belonged to my grandmother, Tristan, Tess explained proudly. Another person asked whether the hairstyle had taken hours. Only about 1,000 years, he replied. By the end of the night, Tristan had danced, laughed, posed for photographs, and eaten far too much candy. When they finally returned home, he stood in front of the mirror one last time. The party was over. The costume would soon come off. Tomorrow, he would probably go back to being Tristan, wearing ordinary clothes and tying his long hair into his usual ponytail. But tonight had taught him something. He didn't have to fit perfectly into other people's expectations. He could like braids without having to explain why. He could enjoy dressing up. He could try something once and decide whether he wanted to do it again. And he could choose his own name for a character, his own costume, and his own version of fun. His mother appeared behind him. So, she asked, did you have a good Halloween? Tristan smiled at his reflection. The zombie costume would have been cool. His mother groaned. Of course. But, he added, carefully touching the ribbon in his hair, I think Tess had a pretty good night too. Grandma called from down the hallway. That's my dress you talking about. Tristan laughed. His mother shook her head. And for a few more minutes, before the bobby pins finally came out and the vintage dress was carefully folded away again, Tristan stood smiling at the mirror. Tess had only been a Halloween character. But Tristan decided that sometimes trying something unexpected could be fun. As long as the choice was his. I don't want anyone else seeing me like this. Tess stood in front of the bedroom mirror, fingers twisting nervously around the end of a ribbon. They'd laugh if they knew. Her mother didn't immediately answer. Instead, she came to stand beside Tess and looked at their reflections together. Maybe some people wouldn't understand, she said. But you don't have to prove anything to anyone. This is supposed to be something you enjoy. Tess glanced at her. So I don't have to go outside? No. Or tell anyone? Not unless you want to. That seemed to matter more than any encouragement. Tess let out a slow breath. Not yet, she decided. Her mother smiled. Not yet is perfectly fine. And so, for the next several months, Tess remained mostly a part of home. During the summer, Tristan spent more and more time experimenting with different looks, not because anyone demanded it, but because curiosity had become impossible to ignore. His mother found inexpensive clothes at charity shops and secondhand stores, colorful dresses, vintage skirts, cardigans, oversized sunglasses, scarves, and unusual accessories. Soon, their weekends developed a familiar rhythm. Tristan would choose an outfit. Then came the important question. What are we doing with the hair? That question became the beginning of every adventure. Sometimes he chose a long braid decorated with small clips. Sometimes he experimented with twists or a half-up style. On especially ambitious days, he and his mother attempted hairstyles from old photographs or costume books. Some attempts were disasters. Once, an experiment involving too many pins caused the entire hairstyle to collapse before lunch. Another time, Tristan accidentally created something his mother described as half movie star, half startled bird. He laughed so hard he had to sit down. But occasionally, everything worked. On those days, Tess would look into the mirror and grin. That one stays. By the end of summer, she had discovered that the part she enjoyed most wasn't necessarily the clothing. It was the creativity. A different hairstyle could completely change the character she imagined. A ribbon made one outfit feel cheerful. A flower clip made another look like something from an old garden party. A dramatic vintage hairstyle could turn an ordinary afternoon into a miniature trip through time. When school started again, Tristan returned to his usual routine. At school, he kept his long hair simple. At home, however, the experiments continued. In September, Tristan turned 10. His mother placed several wrapped presents on the kitchen table. "Those are all for me?" he asked. "Some are for Tristan," she said. He looked at the remaining gifts. "And the others?" She smiled. "For Tess." Inside were sketchbooks, hair accessories, costume jewelry, and a vintage fashion book filled with photographs from different decades. Tristan immediately opened the book. "Oh, wow." His mother sat beside him. "What do you think?" "I think people had much more interesting clothes in the past." "That is a very serious fashion opinion." "It's true." A few pages later, Tristan found photographs from the 1960s. His eyes widened. "There it is." "What?" "That hairstyle from Grandma's pictures." His mother leaned closer. "The beehive." "That's the one." She laughed. "You're obsessed." "I'm studying history." "Of course you are." A few weeks later, his mother cautiously asked, "Have you ever thought about Halloween?" Tristan immediately looked suspicious. "Why?" "Just asking." "You're planning something." "I am not." "You are." She tried not to smile. Eventually, he gave in. "Fine. I've thought about it. And maybe I could go as a character again." His mother waited. "Maybe someone from the 1960s. This time, she couldn't hide her smile. "That sounds familiar." "Don't make a big deal about it." "I won't." "And I haven't decided." "Of course. And if I do it, nobody is allowed to pressure me." His mother's expression softened. "Agreed." That was how the plan began. At Grandma's house on Halloween weekend, Tess emerged from the bathroom with her freshly washed hair hanging down her back. Grandma was waiting with an old photograph album. "Look at this one," she said. Tess sat beside her. The photograph showed Grandma as a child at a formal party, wearing a beautiful blue dress and an enormous bow in her hair. "You really wore that?" "I certainly did." "Were you comfortable?" "Not especially." Tess laughed. "Then why did you wear it?" "Because I thought I looked fabulous." They both burst out laughing. Later that afternoon, they opened the old storage box containing Grandma's vintage party dress. This time, Tess didn't hesitate. "Can I?" Grandma smiled. "You may." The dress became the center of an afternoon-long costume project. The skirt needed adjusting. The old ribbon had to be replaced. Several accessories were tested and rejected. Finally, Tess sat before the vanity. Her mother held up a brush. "One last decision." "The beehive." "The beehive." "Do it." The styling took nearly an hour. When it was finished, Tess stared at herself. The mirror reflected someone who looked as though she had walked directly out of Grandma's childhood photograph. Grandma came up behind her. "Well." Tess slowly smiled. "I actually love it." The party was much harder. Outside the building, Tess suddenly stopped. Music drifted through the doors. Voices and laughter came from inside. Her confidence disappeared. "What if someone recognizes me?" Her mother stood beside her. "Then we leave." Tess looked surprised. "Just like that?" "Just like that." "And if I want to stay?" "Then we stay." Grandma linked arms with both of them. "One step at a time." Tess looked toward the entrance. Then she took a breath. "Okay." Inside, Nobody seemed interested in exposing anyone's secrets. It was Halloween. There were pirates, astronauts, witches, superheroes, monsters, and several costumes Tess couldn't identify at all. Eventually, a girl named Kimmy approached. "I love your costume." Tess blinked. "Really? Really? Is that an actual vintage dress? My grandmother wore it." "No way." That single conversation led to another. Then another. Before long, Tess found herself talking with Kimmy and two other girls, Liv and Rose. They discussed costumes. They argued about music. They laughed at the strange snacks someone had brought. And slowly, Tess stopped worrying about how she looked. She was simply having fun. When the costume contest began, she entered at the last moment. She didn't win first place. She didn't even expect to. But when her name was announced for second place, she stared in shock. Kimmy grabbed her arm. "You won something." "I know. You look like you're going to faint." "I might." The four girls laughed together. And Tess realized something important. For the first time, she had gone somewhere dressed as Tess, and nothing terrible had happened. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor. Kimmy stood outside Grandma's front door holding a small paper bag. "I was hoping Tess was still here," she said. Grandma smiled knowingly. "She is." A few minutes later, Tess and Kimmy were sitting upstairs surrounded by old photographs, ribbons, and boxes of vintage accessories. Kimmy held up a giant plastic flower. "What is this supposed to be?" Tess burst out laughing. "I have absolutely no idea. Your family keeps weird things. This is my grandmother's house. I have no control over the decorations." They spent nearly an hour talking. But eventually, Kimmy became quiet. "Tess." "What?" "There's something I should tell you." Tess turned toward her. Kimmy looked uncomfortable. "My grandmother knew you were coming." Tess waited. "And?" "She told me that you used another name sometimes." The room became very quiet. Tess's stomach tightened. "Does everyone know?" Kimmy shook her head immediately. "No. Just me." Tess looked down. Kimmy continued quickly. "I wasn't trying to trick you. I wanted to meet you first. As you." Tess didn't answer. "I know this is important to you," Kimmy said. "And I'm sorry if keeping it from you was wrong." Finally, Tess looked up. "Why didn't you say anything at the party?" Kimmy shrugged. "Because we were having fun." Tess blinked. "That was your reason?" "Yeah." Kimmy smiled nervously. "I didn't want to ruin it." For a moment, Tess said nothing. Then she laughed. "That might be the weirdest explanation I've ever heard." Kimmy looked relieved. "So you're not angry?" "I'm annoyed at your grandmother." "Fair. But not at you." Kimmy smiled. "Good." Tess pointed toward her. "Your taste in music is still terrible, though." Kimmy grabbed a pillow. "You take that back." "No chance." Seconds later, both girls were laughing again. Back home, however, Tess felt unexpectedly lonely. At Grandma's house, she had met someone who understood that Tess was simply part of her life. But at home, she didn't have that. Her mother noticed. "You miss Kimmy?" "A little." "Have you talked to her?" "Online, but it's not the same." His mother nodded thoughtfully. Then she pulled an envelope from a drawer. "I found something a while ago." Tess looked at it. "What is it?" "A community program for young people and their families." "What kind of program?" "They have art projects, costume events, theater workshops, creative styling classes, movie nights, and seasonal parties." Tess looked increasingly interested. "Really?" Her mother handed her the information sheet. The program was called the Creative Circle. Its purpose was simple: give young people a safe place to explore art, performance, costumes, style, and creativity without being teased or judged. One line stood out to Tess. "Come as yourself, or as any character you want to create." Her eyes widened. "They have costume workshops?" "Yes." "And hairstyling?" "Yes." "And a sleepover movie night?" Her mother laughed. "I thought that part might interest you." Tess looked up. "Can we go?" We can visit the orientation first. When? Next month. Tess dropped dramatically onto the couch. A whole month. You will survive. I don't know if I will. You survived a missing zombie costume. That was different. Orientation day finally arrived. Tess spent far too long deciding what to wear. A blue dress? Too formal. A floral skirt? Too ordinary. A vintage-inspired outfit? Maybe. Eventually, she chose something comfortable and colorful, then braided her hair carefully and added 2 small clips. Her mother waited downstairs. Ready? No. Excellent. Tess stared at her. What? Everyone is nervous the first time. Tess smiled. That's not helpful. It was meant to be. The creative circle was held in a large community center. Inside, the rooms were filled with art supplies, costume racks, mirrors, books, musical instruments, and tables covered with creative projects. A girl named Coco was making friendship bracelets. 2 sisters, Emily and Sarah, were arguing cheerfully over a box of costume accessories. Another girl, Andrea, was showing someone how to create a braid. Tess stood near the doorway. Then Coco looked up. Hi. Are you new? Tess nodded. I'm Tess. I'm Coco. Come sit with us. That was all it took. By the end of the afternoon, Tess had learned 2 new braid techniques, joined a discussion about costume ideas, exchanged phone numbers with Emily and Sarah, with the adults' permission, and signed up for the next creative workshop. On the drive home, she leaned against the car window. Her mother glanced over. So? Tess smiled. I think I found my people. Her mother reached across briefly and squeezed her hand. I'm glad. That evening, Tess called Kimmy. You won't believe what happened today. Did you finally win an argument about music? No. Then I can't be impressed. Tess laughed. There were costume racks, and art rooms, and a styling workshop. And I met these girls, Emily and Sarah. For the next hour, Tess talked excitedly about everything. Kimmy listened, interrupted occasionally with jokes, and demanded every possible detail. By the time the call ended, Tess was exhausted. But she was smiling. She placed her phone beside the bed and looked at her reflection in the mirror. For a long time, she had believed she had to choose between being Tristan or being Tess. Now she wasn't so sure. Maybe she didn't have to solve every question immediately. Maybe she could simply keep discovering what felt right. One hairstyle. One costume. One friendship. One choice at a time. And for the first time, the future didn't feel frightening. It felt wide open.